Hello and welcome, one and all. Welcome back to the Dark Library. It has been quite some time since I've done a recording. If you're curious as to why, I have moved house. I've moved to a different home and nothing major, just a simple move. And it's just that between the moving and work and getting this model up and running, up and ready and all that kind of stuff, it took quite a while. So I was relying a lot on my backlog of content that I proudly work on to pick up the slack while I was away. And unfortunately, the Revice videos had to suffer for it because I was away for quite some time because of said moving. So unfortunately, I could not fully review Revice as a series in terms of its episodes. It's kind of sad about that, but this is a chance for me to give a full review of the Revice, as well as do a general overview of the whole series and my ultimate feelings on Revice as a whole. So yeah, I'm gonna put timestamps and stuff down below about, exactly what I just said. So if you're curious about a certain section, you can look it up there. So yeah, let's talk about Revice, shall we? Okay, so let's just start off with a broad look at the series as a whole. And that's probably a little difficult. So let me just give a brief synopsis of what Revice is as a show. Kamen Rider Revice is the 50th anniversary series for generally the whole Kamen Rider franchise, as well as the third Reiwa era show. The basic premise is that basically some archaeologists in the 1970s found this demon in South America, which is what they used to explain why the dead man act so like they do, but the whole gracias dead man thing. Anyway, they find this thing in Latin America and then use it, as well as the stamp they find in its sealed chamber, as kind of the basis of a new invention known as the Vice stamps. The Vice stamps are used to basically extract a person's inner demon and can be used as a weapon or a tool or whatever. Anyway, a cult known as the Dead Man have gotten their hands on these Vice stamps, and they're a demon worshipper cult whose ultimate goal is to revive Gif, and they also have their hands on Gif's coffin, a tool that they plan to use to, revive him. Now, a governmental force known as Phoenix exists to bring down the dead men, and they have developed a new weapon to combat them known as the Revice driver. This driver, created by someone named George Karazaki, we'll be talking about him later. Gotta talk about a whole mess of characters later. So, they developed the Revice driver so someone can fight alongside their demon under the demon under that person's control, so that they can fight the dead men and the dead men's demons. Our hero is Iki Igarashi, a young man who gets his hands on the Revice driver during an rather chaotic accident. In order to protect his family, he takes up the Revice driver and becomes Kamen Rider Revice, alongside his inner demon known as Vice, who becomes Kamen Rider Vice. The pair fight together as Kamen Rider Revice. So the big gimmick for this season is the fact that, unlike previous seasons, Revice is not two people who become one rider. Unlike Double, it is one person who becomes two riders thanks to his inner demon becoming outward and helping him alongside fights. This means that most fights end up being rather hilarious 2v1s, which I just find that funny as someone who watches Dragon Ball and how many fights end up one-on-ones because of pride and saying stuff, but it's like so many fights will be over if they just teamed up and tackled the bad guy together. And it's like so many fights in Revice are 2v1s where Iki and Vice are just wailing on the newest villain. And honestly, that's kind of cool, although they do still have the main hero occasionally. Well, one deals with the main villain or main threat. The other one's typically dealing with the mooks for the season. Okay, so Revice is also interesting in the fact that it's easily broken up into about 5 different arcs or chapters of the story, with the first one being the intro arc for the Dead Men. This is honestly one of the two best arcs of the series. I have to say, okay, so there's this rather common discussion point in the Kamen Rider fandom about how series basically start off really good, they'll have really good intros, and then over time they fall off. This is a very, very common talking point. Like, so many people watch a series, say, oh yeah, the beginning is really good, but it falls off after the midpoint. And basically they say that about every series, and it's just kind of annoying to say, but I have to say, I think it's very applicable to Revice. Like, basically the closer we get to Giff becoming the main antagonist, the closer the plot gets to absolutely tanking, in my opinion. Just because Giff is probably the weakest villain I've seen in Kamen Rider to date. But I'll be talking about Giff when we get to the villains. But he is probably possibly one of the weakest. Like, I probably rank him below well, I know he's basically God, but is he like called the Lord of Light in Agito? Like basically him. Like, he's basically God, and that's kind of what Giff is at the same time. But we'll be talking about that when we get to the characters, specifically the villain section. But first, the second arc is one where the main heroes have basically won, essentially, and they're basically wrapping up the remnants of the Dead Man cult, including taking down Osaleta, who is one of the Dead Man generals, and he basically becomes main antagonist for a while, about 12 episodes or so, and it's a really good arc. Like, Osaleta makes a pretty good antagonist for his part in the story, as just being an out-and-out asshole. Again, I'll talk about villains later, but I ultimately did like the arc where Osaleta was the main enemy. Next is, I kind of want to say, Phoenix Corruption arc, and it's just not that great. Like, I honestly think this arc goes a little too long for my taste until we ultimately get to Giff's revival. I mean, Giff being fully out in the open, and it's just kind of dull. Like, I get it, Giff is an insurmountable foe, blah blah blah, humanity, all that kind of stuff, blah blah blah. Daiji being a dickhead, blah blah blah. Talking about that when we get the characters. But yeah, that all kind of just goes on for a little too long. And Giff isn't even our final foe, because we have a whole, like, kind of 4-episode arc after Giff is defeated. And at first I thought he was going to come back for the finale, because I don't think, is he just gone now? Like, I know they rider kicked both inside and outside, but I guess that did the trick and finally beat him. It feels kind of anticlimactic, in all honesty, especially because this isn't even a final episode. So yeah, Giff is beaten, and then we have a part where, again, we'll talk about getting the characters, but essentially it's a more personal storyline involving George and him dealing with the grief from his father's passing, / a lot of shit between those two characters, because a lot of shit went down essentially between George and his father, and he doesn't take it well. He becomes a Kamen Rider and swears to beat everyone else. Essentially, you can make a Decade joke. I working on the Decade videos. I'm just like, Decade jokes. So he basically becomes Decade and tries to beat all the Riders before Icky beats him. But then the last 2 episodes are dealing with Icky and his issue, because I didn't mention it, but I'm bringing up in air characters. But Icky has this whole deal with Vice because of the demon contract, where using Vice's power, he loses more and more of his memories the more he uses Vice's power, and he uses Vice's power when he transforms. So the more he transforms to fight, the more he's losing his memories, and he's slowly losing his memories of his precious family. Like, it's honestly, like, to praise the acting for a minute, like, there's a moment where Icky loses his memories of his parents, and the acting is legitimately pretty good. It's, like, really touching and kind of sad to see, like, what obviously loving family being rocked by such tragedy, and they're still trying to, still be together, do the family thing, and Icky's just kind of confused because he's just like, I don't remember who you are. I don't remember, my mother, my father, my brother and sister. So it's kind of really sad, and honestly, especially because this is what Icky's been fighting for the entire series. But the final episodes are about Icky and Vice and their thing and the contract. And I'm going to be honest, the last 2 episodes are kind of touching. Like, not like, this isn't like I wouldn't rank them amongst the top, like, even 10, maybe. Like, I have to go back and look, but it probably would rank as like the bottom 10 if I did a list of most touching Kamen Rider deaths, quote unquote deaths. I say quote unquote because there's always a chance that Vice can come back, because there's definitely going to be a crossover movie, because that makes Toei money. So we have a crossover movie potentially, and we have, potential specials in V cinemas, that kind of stuff. So there's a good chance Vice can come back. Like, it could be a whole little mini movie trilogy, The Return of Vice, that kind of thing. But honestly, just for what it is in the show, the final episode is really touching. It's just Icky and Vice kind of doing a play fight, where Vice spent a whole episode trying to trick Icky into fighting him, so Icky wouldn't hold back in the fight. But Icky catches on and still continues with Vice's plan and fights him. And it's honestly kind of touching, because this is the first time in a while I've seen someone actually enjoy using their Kamen Rider powers, and also just a cool showcasing of all the forms all the base forms, because obviously they stop using it around the time super forms get involved. Because it would be really awkward when they get the Thunder Gale, and then there's like, oh wait, this wasn't a good idea. But it was still kind of touching, especially them just kind of playing around with the Genomixes. I had to talk about that. So Genomixes are another gimmick for the series, in which Icky and Vice kind of do a contortion. They basically combine themselves into a kind of mock-up of the animal that the Vice Amp is based on, because this is an animal-themed series, similar to... Honestly, we've been having a lot of animal-themed series. But anyway, yeah, so obviously this is a series that's animal and very, obviously because the anniversary series, also based around the gimmick of previous Rider series. For example, the Eagle is based on Double, the Mammoth is based on Deno, etc., etc., etc. It's that kind of show. Also, the Brachiosaurus is based on Zeo, which I find funny. Anyway, so we have this series doing that, and it's honestly kind of cool. Like, I like the initial forms a lot, especially how they homage to previous writers. Although the animals, like some of them, like Eagle kind of makes sense for Double, because, Cyclone, I hear an argument for Mammoth and Deno, but some of them don't make any sense. Like, again, Brachiosaur and Zeo, like, I kind of get, maybe because the Brachiosaur is so old and Tales of Time series thing, but I don't really understand why certain ones are animals. Certain ones are certain animals, although I still do enjoy it, and I do enjoy the forms. Next talking point. So if I have to give just a base score for the series, I'd say it's a pretty mixed bag. Like, Saber was easier to talk about because I had a lot of dislike for that series. I don't hate Saber. Ultimately, I can come away liking Saber. I can walk away from Saber liking some of the episodes, some of the characters. Not all of them, definitely not all of them, but some of them. I'll come away from Revice liking more of it, but still having my own misgivings with the series, especially around that latter half of the show until we get to the finale. But I think I should save that for when we talk about the villains, because I think that's probably the biggest letdown for this series. But let's move on to characters now, shall we? Alright, so we're going to break the characters down into various bits. There are a lot of named and important characters for Revice, so we're going to start off with the obvious set and talk about the Igarashi family. They're going to get their own segments, and everyone else have to just go from there. So obviously we're going to start with our main character, Icky and Vice, our main characters. Combining them into two because the person and demon, but I'm going to come away and say they are pretty good. I like their combination. So I don't believe I've said this in a video before, but me and a friend of mine have a way of talking about main writers. Basically, they're either supporting protagonists, where they're stoic characters, static characters. Those of you who don't know writing terms, look that up. So yeah, the static characters who don't really change or grow throughout the series, but help others grow in exchange, or they're more round, and the fact that they're the ones who grow into being a true hero. In Ikki's case, he's pretty static. He starts off the series wanting to fight to protect his family, and he basically keeps up that. He basically never changes. He wants to fight to protect his family, and that's basically all he does. And yeah, that's a simple, good motivation. That's all you really need out of a main character and a main writer is a simple motivation. And it works for Ikki. What I do have to say is I do also like that he does have such simple motivation and has something else, because he's also, it's constantly brought up that he's a busybody, someone who pushes himself into situations he doesn't need to be into for either the sake of helping others or just because he is himself. And it's shown to be an ongoing thing with his character, and ultimately speaking, I come away liking this more than disliking it. Although I do have some complications with it, because partway through the series, so it's brought up for the first time in episode 4. And then it's brought up again later, much later in the series, where they talk about Ikki being a busybody in a more negative sense. And then they keep bringing it up, so on, as somewhat negative trait. But then they bring it back up later again as a more positive trait. And so it feels really weird for them to have this be his main thing, episode 4, and then they seem to resolve it in episode 4 and 5. But then by the time we get to later episodes and it's brought up again, it's shown to be something more of an annoyance to other people, or just a negative aspect of his personality. But then it is basically just retconned back to this original episode 5 state. It's like they didn't know what they wanted to do with this trait of Ikki's, and basically just decided to go the whole gambit around. Speaking of the whole gambit around, we have Vice. Now, again, I'm combining them into one segment because they are two people in one. To use a double reference, Vice is Ikki's inner demon, and demons and Revice are weird in the fact that they both do and don't represent aspects of the person that they come from. Now, I'm going to talk about it when we get to the villain segment, but it's really weird because the Igarashi's sibling demons act very different from the way other demons are treated in the series. And it could be because they're awakened naturally, or it could be because they are GIF in a way, or they have GIF DNA, because the Igarashi siblings are descendants of GIF, and that's why they can all become Kamen Riders. It is kind of funny in a way, because we do see people who either don't have demons or have other powers related to demons who can become Kamen Riders. But it is weird that the Igarashis have so different demons from everyone else in regards to how their demons are portrayed and used throughout the series. And Vice is a prime example of this because he's just kind of there. He doesn't, you can argue Vice represents some aspect of Ikki's personality, but it's not really shown in the series itself. I don't believe it's shown or ever expressed as something as simple as some of the other characters, as the way that theirs are expressed. But in Ikki's case, Vice is basically just there as a support, and I kind of like that. Vice works pretty well as a support character for Ikki, and they have a pretty really cool relationship. And it's also nice that by the end of the series, Ikki straight up just sees Vice as a member of the family, especially considering how at the beginning of the series it started off as really antagonistic, and the question of can we trust Vice is a major aspect of the plot line for quite a while, until we get close to the end of the Dead Men arc, in which case it's just out and out said, oh yes, we can trust Vice. Vice is trustworthy and can work alongside Ikki no matter what. And I like that this is also shown in the show, because so the way demons, or at least specifically how Vice works, is that he originally appears kind of as a specter appearing from Ikki's shadow in a way that only Ikki can hear, like a voice in his head, but he's also external. But later on in the show, because Vice has gained all of Ikki's trust and doesn't need to be held back anymore, doesn't need to be contained or caged. He's allowed to basically come out thanks to the power of the Vice stamps, and can come out and join the family, do stuff, help with the bathhouse spa. Oh, did I forget to mention that they run a bathhouse? I went through like 3 versions of this, and the one time I get the recording right, I forget to mention the bathhouse. It's a major element of the plot. Damn it. Anyway, yeah. So Vice can help out with the bathhouse, all kinds of stuff, and they do some cool ideas with the whole Ikki Vice dynamic. Like an episode, because of a Vice stamp, Ikki and Vice managed to switch spots where Ikki's on the inside and Vice is on the outside. And then we have one more time where Ikki and Vice are merged into a single body and are basically switching back and forth over control of said body. And then we finally get Ikki and Vice back to normal, split up into 2 later on in the series. But it's still interesting to see them do some really interesting things with this idea of Ikki and Vice's relationship. I won't say that. I mean, obviously they're going for this whole Ankh and Eiji kind of feel for the relationship. At least at first, how they're antagonistic at least a little bit. Although obviously Ankh is way more jokey than obviously Vice is way more jokey than Ankh would ever be intentionally. But I do have to say, I do like the dynamic. But one to complain is the fact that Vice can be a little much. So Vice has his constant fourth wall breaking thing, and it can get a little much. Not gonna lie, would rather that be toned down at least a little bit, But I do have to admit, the 3, 2, 1 countdown when finishers and explosions happen is probably it's probably one of my favorite things in the show, because it's like, I kind of like a good countdown gag, and I do like the fact that it happens with any major fight. Then the big explosion happens. The 3, 2, 1. It reminds me. A part of it could be my love for Forza. I'm not gonna lie. I could be such a Forza simp that countdown is just etched into my soul. Such a really cool thing. So, while I honestly like Ikki and Vice as a pair, I have to say Ikki as a solo character probably relies a lot more on the characters that surround him to back up his slack when it comes to being a character. But I also become away liking them. And I come away liking their dynamic and how they work with other characters. Speaking of, let's get to our secondary writer. Despite debuting technically 3rd, there's a complicated character here. So next up is the second son and younger brother of Ikki, obviously, of the Igarashi family, Daiji Igarashi, as well as his demon Kagero. Daiji is weird, as his demon is very different from both his brothers and his sisters, as his demon Kagero is more internal. They never try to bring Kagero out with the Vice stamp, but Kagero was always inside of Daiji. They just switch spots in the body, similar to what Ikki and Vice did, but on a more internal basis. Kagero was first introduced as a villain in the form of Kamen Rider Evil, whose suit is really cool. It has this kind of graffiti spray paint motif thing going for it, which is really cool. And then later on, Daiji is able to gain control of himself thanks to a rider kick and becomes Kamen Rider Live, because his driver can switch between the two different forms based on if it's in blade mode or gun mode, which is honestly a pretty cool mechanic. I did want to mention the fact that I also find it funny that Daiji can be rider kicked into being switched out, and it's used as a plot point more than once that this is a thing that happens to Daiji specifically. He is rider kicked, and Kagero comes out, Kagero is rider kicked, and Daiji comes out. It is legitimately a really cool attention to detail thing that I'm happy the show did not forget and they brought up multiple times. I'm also happy that they didn't forget Kagero. Okay, so I'm going to mention this now. Prior to the series, Kagero is quote-unquote killed in an effort for Daiji to get a power-up. But this is later revoked, and Daiji and gets an even better power-up by combining him and Kagero's powers. And Daiji gets a really weird arc where he joins up with the bad guys towards the end of the series, towards this like midpoint where he becomes the antagonist because he's given up all hope of defeating Gif, seeing Gif's power as absolute. I referred to Daiji as a kind of Suzaku-esque character when I was reviewing the episodes, and I stand by that because he's a very Suzaku-esque character, and like Suzaku, eventually he is brought over by the hero of the plot, or main character of the plot, to his side because he basically fucked up and really doesn't know where to go with his life. Or in Lucia's case, he was shown the truth of the matter. In Daiji's case, he was finally given a glimmer of hope by his brother that they do have at least a small glimmer of a chance of beating Gif, and decided to bet on that small glimmer of hope instead of consistently sabotaging their plans. Like, okay, so by this point, the villain faction is composed of Daiji, and two characters that I'm going to get into later. And one of them tried to kill Daiji's mom. Like, not even accidentally. Like, he targeted Daiji's mom in particular because he wants to get at Daiji's father. We'll talk about them in a minute. But you'd think you would have words for the person who tried to kill your mom. I'm just saying, Daiji. You know that happened, and yet I know you're having beef for their brother, but your mother is not involved in that. Yet you're still working for the person who tried to kill her. I'm just saying, priorities, dude. Jesus. Anyway, Daiji's probably, like, I like Daiji. I like him in the beginning of the series. I like him at the end of the series. But during that segment, he's probably the most frustrating character, with so many characters trying to get it into his head to stop being a dickbag and working for the villain, that they have a chance of beating Gif, and yet he just like, shut up, humanity has no choice but to fall in line, shut up, and basically literally has to be rider kicked into submission and basically driven to the point where he can no longer deny his inner darkness or whatever. They try to do this thing that honestly isn't mentioned at all much until this point, when they talk about having your inner demon destroyed, and how Daiji killed his inner demon essentially for a power-up, and how that might be affecting his actions in a way, like driving him, pushing him to such extremes, joining up with the gift side, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's not really gone into that much. It's just kind of weird how it's brought up and just kind of dropped in the same sentence, if you ask me. Again, they do try to make this a thing, but it's not so much of a thing. And then later, Daiji, the Kagero comes back because he was just asleep inside of Daiji, and basically Daiji felt regret for killing Kagero, despite the fact that up to that point, Daiji didn't even give two shits about Kagero. Speaking of Kagero, Kagero represents, because they actually managed to express what a demon represents for its host, I guess you would call it. Kagero represents Daiji's inner darkness, born out of a, say it with me now, inferiority complex driven by having a better older sibling. That typical second child bullshit. Being the middle child. Anyway, Kagero's born from that and his internalized dislike and hatred of Ikki. Originally, Kagero only has one purpose, and that is to kill Ikki, or at least beat him into submission before Ikki beat Kagero, and then later on, Kagero just kind of hangs around. Like, he'll help the group get to the Deadman base, team up with the Deadman in the middle of a fight because, hey, I worked with you guys for like 5 minutes because I want to beat up Revice, but I'm not really gonna be a member. And then later on, he's full on fighting against Gif because at that point, that's what you have to do. Kagero does kind of soothe out, and I do kind of like him as just this like living incarnation of edge, of like Daiji's edgy teenage phase, especially because of the way he dresses. And they even have a funny joke at the end, and it's just kind of by the end of the relationship, it's kind of funny about about this pair and how they're basically two souls in the same body that are constantly at least reach a version of harmony with each other. Although I do kind of wish they did the weird stand thing that Daiji can do in his Evolti form more. Like, obviously, there was Rider Form debut. Rider Form debuts have a lot of stuff that the writer can be shown to do that he never does again in the middle of the series. Like the whole clone army thing Revi and Vice can do in their final form. And in Evolti's case, Evolti Alive, you can do this whole weird stand projection thing, summoning out a kind of stand of evil to help him in a fight. And that would have been convenient. It would have been also really fun to have at least stand evil join in on the Family Rider kick in the finale, in the final fight against GIF. But, that is something to be talked about later. But in terms of characters, Daiji's probably my least liked of the main cast, but only because of that stint where he's a villain. When he's back to being a good guy, I ultimately do like him. And I honestly like the later dynamic he has with Kagero, as well as I like that Kagero basically just becomes his living edge self, and it's kind of just fun to see. Okay, next up we have the youngest Igarashi sibling and only daughter of the family, and Sakura Igarashi, as well as her demon, Loveku. They are an odd pair. For one thing, Loveku is the only non-humanoid demon of the Igarashi siblings. In fact, she's basically a giant plush toy, and she doesn't even know how to say more than one word besides her own name, essentially, early on when she's first introduced. So Loveku is another demon meant to represent something. In her case, she represents Sakura's weakness. Sakura is basically prided on her strength, being a strong warrior, being a strong person, and wants to become stronger so she can help fight alongside her brothers, especially by this point in the show. She's targeted by one of the main villains in Aguilera, what she's known as early on, and so, well, she basically becomes kind of her rival for a bit until eventually she becomes Kamen Rider John and still continues to be her rival. Anyway, Sakura wants to do her best to really be strong, and sadly enough has the catchphrase of being invincible, which leads to her taking a lot of L's. Especially around the point where Daiji is quote-unquote evil, or technically evil, so someone has to take the L's for Ikki, and unfortunately that person is Sakura. Yeah. I do have to admit, when it comes to writers, I do like Sakura. I do like her as a character. I like her dynamic with her brothers. She looks up to Ikki and is close to Daiji. And she just loves her family and works hard for them. With her being invincible thing. If I have any complaints, it is that she can be... some people dislike her because of her "I'm invincible" catchphrase, and then she takes an immediate L. Again, I find it funny because that's kind of just what you expect when a character declares himself as invincible, and then they may take L's. And I also end up liking her dynamic with Loveku. She's probably the only one who doesn't have an antagonistic relationship with her demon, but later on it evolves into something closer to friendship. Like, they were pretty close before, but they evolve even more. And again, Loveku represents Sakura's weakness, so there's this kind of early plot point about Loveku needing to be protected for Sakura to fight. And so many people, there's so many times in an episode, that so many fights where someone has to protect Loveku because, Sakura's fighting, so she can't watch after Loveku. But later on, Loveku, frustrated because again she still represents a part of Sakura, so Loveku's frustrated that she can't fight, sheds and grows in her own way to be able to fight alongside Sakura, and for Sakura to get a power-up. That's not really explained where that power-up comes from. Like, it's weird because almost all the power-ups in the series are explained because they're either invented by George or his father. We'll talk about them next in a second, but not the King Cobra Revice stamp. That just came out of nowhere. Yeah, it thematically makes sense, but again, it's weird in a series that has been really good with explaining where the power-ups are coming from or who's inventing them, to suddenly just have this random Vice stamp that is not explained just come out of nowhere, and it's just kind of funny if you ask me. But overall, I do think, honestly speaking, John's more of a secondary writer than Daiji at certain points in the show. but she's just not treated as such. That she still has a secondary writer spot. But I come away liking John more. It's just like that. Okay, it's just like that. But despite me not having a lot to say about her, I still like her. Enough said. So let's move on. So let's take care of Papa and Mama Igarashi in one go. Papa Igarashi, also known as Genta Igarashi, also known as Junpei Shinamura, and we'll explain that in a second, as well as his wife Yukimi Igarashi. The pair are the loving parents of the Igarashi trio siblings, and are doting loving parents that love each other, are very close, and again, love their kids. It's not a lot. They don't need to be a lot. They are themselves good and happy and together. And that's really good, especially because of the miniseries. Revice is weird. It has so many miniseries spin-offs that I haven't seen something like this in a while. So it was weird that there's so many. So basically there's a spin-off, the Veil prequel spin-off, which is kind of a darker, edgier Kamen Rider show, but explains kind of the origin of the Igarashi family, in which basically back in the day, Genta was a completely different person under the name of Junpei Shinamura. So Junpei was your average boy until a demon ate his family, and he was basically driven by rage to join up with a group to fight demons, and which he, alongside the voice-less driver, what was later revealed to be his demon Veil, who was that demon who actually ate his family under the orders of the real big bad of the series up until Gif is awakened. Him and his demon Veil do not get along. We'll talk about Veil when we get to villains, but he has been working his hardest to basically be a good father. So it's funny. Yumiko, she doesn't really do that much, but she's just a really good supporting mother, and that's all really she needs to be. She's had her story, had her adventures with Genta in his prequel series, so she just wants to sit back, have a nice, calm life with her husband and children. Also, she has a really fun dynamic with the family. Anyway, it's just good. Anyway, so Junpei, Genta, they switch, sadly spends a good portion of the series just not around because he's dealing with his whole Junpei thing, as well as Veil hunting him down out of revenge for what happened at the end of their miniseries, in which he basically fought and abandoned Veil, as well as the fact that Veil, about 10 years prior to the start of the series, actually attacked the Igarashi family, possessing Genta's body, attempted to kill everyone. Young Ikki, I think Daiju was an infant at the time, and all that kind of stuff. Before Ikki made a contract with Vice originally and managed to stop Veil from burning down the Happy Spa. It's a pretty complicated backstory, but ultimately I come away liking these pairs' parents, especially Genta. Like, at first I didn't think I would like Genta because he's a typical bumbling dad, but he shows he's there for his kids when he needs to be, especially when he threw down with Veil one last time to show a lesson to Daiji. Daiji's in the middle of his super evil phase. It's cool. I honestly like it. I also like that the mother is just completely in on everything. There's no secrets. So she's just been keeping it a secret because that's, not something that her husband wants to remember. I mean, he can't remember it until later on, but he doesn't really want to because it's a tragic moment in his life. And she's just trying to help him, in a way, move on from that. And I also do like the ending joke with them, where it's like, she starts up a YouTube channel and it's way more successful than Genta's YouTube channel. I was going to mention now Busan, who, essentially he is at this point he's a family member. He was a member of the group that worked alongside, Genta. He was Junpei in Kamen Rider Veil. But he has also, but he's also in the secret and is helping to keep Veil from finding Genta, and works really hard to keep his friend safe. And he's essentially a member of the family. He's like that one cool uncle. It is also kind of a funny joke because Early on in this series, Iki has to go to him for help with investigations into certain people, and Iki's like, "Hey, what do you do for a job?" Now I think about it, he's like, "Oh, just stuff." It's like he never wants to elaborate because he's hiding a secret about Veil and stuff. It's just kind of a funny thing that leads into stuff later on. But I do like the fact that, you know, they are parents. That's their primary thing. That they're parents. The fact that it's a family and it's shown as a family. Again, that's part of the aspect of Revice I really like, is the fact that they show an actual family, like a family, and not just a family in name only. But let's move away from the Igarashi family and on to our other supporting characters. When it comes to other important characters in the series, we cannot go without the honestly wide cast of side characters. At first, we have 3 from Phoenix, the Phoenix Commander, whose name I forget, George Karazaki, as well as Hiromi. Hiromi eventually becomes the tertiary writer for the season, Kamen Rider Demons, before that gets stolen by one of the villains, and then it gets taken back and turned into the Kamen Rider Over Demons, who is still tertiary writer for the series. As for George, he is basically the dude who invents most of the stuff until his father comes back. His father, Masami Karazaki, and then they work together to invent basically most of the rest of the equipment for the series, including Revice's final form. The thing of it is, I can honestly put George in the antagonist section, because as part of the final 4 episodes, George basically becomes the main antagonist as Kamen Rider Juga for 2 episodes before he's beaten by Iki, mainly out of grief over his father's passing. So George had believed his father had been dead for most of his life, as he believed his father died when he was a child. His father, in fact, faked his death and went on the run from Phoenix because of the evil corruption inside the organization, and formed his own group, Weekend, who become the de facto good guys for the latter half of the season. George obviously had complicated emotions about this until his father finally actually died, in which case he basically took all his research, became a Kamen Rider of his own, and decided to basically pull a Decade and beat all other Kamen Riders to prove he's the strongest. Out of a mix of grief over his father's death, not wanting to fall into the path of the future his father set for him, because there's a plot point of his father injecting his own demon into his son, which that's kind of weird. Like, not even a little weird, it's just really, really weird. Anyway, so George dealt with that, and not in the healthiest of ways. That Hiromi basically becomes the commander after the commander's death, the commander died in episode 1, but was replaced with the Chameleon Dead Man. So the commander that we knew for most of the series basically was not a character. Basically was an antagonist and just a copy of the same character. So basically, it's complicated. He was I'm gonna stop talking about it. Anyway, Hiromi basically became the commander, and he also basically became the Weekend commander after his return. He was believed to be dead for a time, but came back later on and became the leader of the Demons Troopers. Because prior to the series, George managed to create a mass-produced rider belt. This is using demons as the basis of, and creates a group of riders known as the Demons Troopers. And they are the Ride Troopers, essentially, for the season. And he also takes them out, too. It was like, dude, you know these guys were weaker. They barely did any fights. Why did you have to destroy their entire force? I mean, it's probably for the best, but still, this kind of fucked up how you just take them all out like this. Interestingly enough, if you count all the riders, counting Revi and Vice's 2 separate riders, obviously, we end up with a grand total of 14 riders, meaning we've surpassed the Ryuki number of 13, although that also includes counting Evil and Live as 2 separate riders, as well as counting the Demons Troopers as 2 separate riders, albeit they are very similar. They are just cosmetically different. There's really enough for some reason. Demons and Over Demons are considered separate riders, despite the fact they use the same belt and are basically like Over Demons is just like regular demons with some of the Veil overlay from Kamen Rider Veil. So, personal level, I count Revi and Vice as two separate riders because they can fight independently. I don't really count Evil and Live as two separate riders. Like, they're two different personalities, but they use the same belt. So I can count them as two separate riders, but I feel in my heart of hearts they don't really count as two separate riders. I don't count Demons and Overdemons as two separate riders because the Overdemons just feels like an upgrade to regular Demons. And I don't count the Demons Troopers as two separate riders, as they are Rite Troopers. Essentially, there's two different flavors of Rite Troopers, and so they share the same spot as Mook Riders. So that brings the grand total from 14 down to 11, and on my personal count. Like, technically speaking, I can hear an argument for counting Overdemons and Evil as two separate riders to bring it back up to 13, but I refuse to count the two Rite Trooper variants as two separate riders because they're just Rite Troopers. Anyway, enough about Kamen Rider count, because there's also Kamen Rider Igarashi, which is technically speaking a form of Revice, but also not. And that's not even counting some of the more movie-exclusive riders like Kamen Rider Chimera, Kamen Rider Daimon, and Kamen Rider Century. Oh boy. Also, there's Kamen Rider Dark Aguilera. I should probably talk about her in the villain segment, but Aguilera, one of the main principal Deadmans, alongside Tamaki, another one of the principal Deadmans, eventually turned sides because of plot and having their organization and faith destroyed. Although in his case, he wasn't loyal to the Deadman's group, he was loyal to her. So his faith wasn't destroyed, he was just switching gears alongside of her. Her faith was destroyed because she was literally raised by the cult. Because they're a freaking cult. And that's probably, funny enough, the most cult-like thing the Deadman's cult does outside of hold weird rave parties in their cult basement. In their cult hangout. But yeah, she switches sides following Sakura and becomes a member of the Weekend group that was founded by George's father, Masami. There are also two other Weekend members who, alongside the third Weekend member who becomes the main user for Overdemons, Hikaru. He's been the main Overdemons user for a minute. Like, they form a pseudo family whose main job is to watch the Igarashis, and they are super sus for like the first part of the series until they're finally explaining what their deal is. And it's like, you can make a Attack on Titan what's in the basement joke, because they tease you with this basement in one episode, and we just don't figure out what's down there for quite a few episodes. That they're a member of the Weekend organization who lost family to the Deadman's actions and formed a pseudo family, but the pseudo family feels a lot like a real family, because when you get down to it, the season's theming is about family. You see that's really prevalent when it comes to the villains for the season. If there's any element of Revice I'm most disappointed with, it's the villains. In all honesty, the villains had a pretty strong showing at the very beginning of the series. They were pretty well done. I liked the Deadmen as a group. They had a goal, they were working towards it, and they had their own, methods of doing it. Their basic goal was revive GIF, and the way to do that was by getting, I believe it was 7 contract holders and a sacrifice, I think 6 in the sacrifice, together to perform a ritual to revive GIF. And hey, it was close to working. It was a pretty feasible goal. They had to find the right people, and so they had to spread their Vice stamps as far as they possibly could. Sort of like a semi-museum with the Gaia memories, how they had to spread those as far as they could for the sake of their research. In this case, they were spreading the Vice stamps as far as they could to find the suitable sacrifices / people for the process of reviving GIF. And then finally, we had Osoleta being the main villain, and he worked as the main villain for he was on for 12 episodes of the series, but it ultimately worked. He was in the shadows, scheming, using whatever he had on his hands to be a major threat to our heroes, and honestly putting them on the back foot on occasion, as well as being the biggest shit eater at times when he couldn't fight, when the group when he was basically kill stealing people or just killing people outright for the sake of being an asshole. Because there was no reason for him to kill fucking Tamaki's friend. He did it to be a dick. There was a reason for him to kill his own ally in front of Hiromi. He did it to, repeat after me, be a dick. I mean, yeah, he also had some other reasons just for sake of gaining power, but still, it was to be a dick because Oceletta was a massive dick and eventually basically bringing down Phoenix, at least their helicarrier, all on his own, with the help of his teacher, who was his initial and primary backer for quite a while. That said teacher being Hideo Akihisa, who is a very disappointing downgrade in the beginning of the downgrade of the villain. So basically, once the rate of gift started ramping up, Akihisa became the main villain, and he was a major downgrade from Oceletta. I liked it when he got to ham it up, but him basically being a gigantic GIF simp whose only motivation and goal was to please GIF, who, I'm gonna be honest, by this point, they should have just given GIF a voice. Like, I think the biggest disappointment I have is the fact that GIF himself doesn't actually talk. Like, later on we get a voice and some speech from GIF, but it's kind of like Arc in 01 in the fact that he's a nebulous force until later on. But at least Arc was given a bit of a voice and an avatar with a direct connection that honestly worked well for her role in Azu. And yes, you can argue that Akihisa is analogous to Azu, but in Akihisa's case, he's trying to interpret GIF's will, while Azu directly knows Arc's will. Arc's will is eliminate all humans to eliminate all malice, and manipulate malice for the sake of erasing all malice. Akihisa is basically going, oh, GIF wants to live alongside humanity, so we have to pacify humans, all that kind of stuff. But we don't really know if that's GIF's ultimate goal. Eventually, GIF comes out and says that he's been feeding off humanity's demons and essentially using humanity as a food source, but says that they're kind of unstable and he's wiping them out to create a more stable future. But he wants to create a world where the Igarashi family can live as the rulers of this new world because he sees them as his family. And again, it's just kind of weird flip-flopping and trying to shove this theme of family on the villain side into our hero side. Like, we have a hint that Akihisa, he has, or I'm just gonna keep calling Akihisa. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. They have some kind of issue from his past because his backstory is he was a former king of some ancient civilization where GIF landed, and GIF basically wiped out his civilization, and he promised to watch over humanity, so GIF wouldn't wipe out all humanity for the transgressions against him, for being called a demon, because he's apparently not a demon, despite being the father of demons, and that's just kind of, I don't know, weird if you ask me. They never really explain what GIF is besides being an alien. So, basically to sum up, I find Revice's villains are disappointing outside of the Dead Men after their initial debut showing. After their initial arc is over. They do make good supporting characters in the latter half of the show, but yeah, the Dead Men were probably the best antagonist the series has, and in all honesty, I found GIF to be a rather boring villain, if mostly because he lacked much presence, and also the whole talking thing, which didn't help the lack of presence. It would have worked if GIF was just some kind of nebulous force, and then eventually something like Veil would take his power to become the main villain. Now, speaking of, Veil was probably the best post-Dead Man antagonist, or post-Oceletta antagonist that we had. He had one simple objective, and that was get revenge on the Igarashi family, and he worked towards it. We understood him, and he was a right bastard. Again, Veil worked as probably the best of the villain group at that point in the show. And yeah, I did like his final conflict with Ginta, and it was a good wrap up to their story, even if it feels a bit weird for Ginta to forgive the demon that ate his parents in the way, albeit Veil only did that under orders from Akihisa, although I don't think they ever found that out. So yeah. Again, overall, the villains were disappointing outside the Dead Men and Veil, if only because Veil was a spiteful bastard and I kind of loved him for that. And yeah, Revice had a villain problem and it didn't really fix it. So, once and for all, final thoughts on Revice. If I had to say anything about the series, I'd say it was a pretty good show. I say it was pretty good. It had its highs and lows. A really rather long low in the after the midpoint of the series until the finales. Well, until the finale happened. But I did love parts of the show. I liked the bond between Icky and Vice and the other demons and their host. I really loved the Ginta and Veil story once I had the full context for the Veil special to come out. I still need to finish watching that. I might do a video on it, not sure. Probably need to watch the other movies because there's the Saber crossover and the Battle Familia movie that I haven't seen. Battle Familia isn't out on DVD, so I can't see it yet. So that's my excuse there. But also I need to see that Saber V Cinema 2, the Sin Trinity. That was what it was called, or something with Sin in it. I know the song on that is a banger. Speaking of songs, Revice has a lot of songs. The intro theme, Live Devil, was really good. I honestly did like Live Devil's intro theme. Other people did like to make the jokes about the whole just Revice thing. Then there is some of the insert songs that they had. There was the insert song from the Veil special, My Dream. That was honestly pretty good. The Vice insert song, I liked I don't like the actual lyrics to it. I liked the instrumental, Volcano, and Go With The Flow. Like, it's funny that they dropped the same day for the two forms, and yet those are really good songs. Those are really hype. And Mirage Mirror, love it. I love it. It's Daiji's insert song. George has a song. They randomly dropped. I didn't even think they played it in the series. They dropped a song for George, and it's legitimately kind of fun. He's kind of rhyming different writers because it's the song is called George Karazaki's Rider System, and I don't know if they ever played it in the show, but it's pretty good. They also released a song for the final episode that Kimi wa Sono Mamadi, and I have no idea if I said that right. I just like the song. It's pretty good. It has a pretty good instrumental. And the Sakura song is also pretty good. Cherry-ish. I just hate the name. Cherry-ish. That doesn't really sound like anything. Like, at least Mirror Mirage fits Daiji a lot, like Daiji and Kagero a lot. Cherry-ish, well, I think the song itself fits Sakura. The name is just cutesy bullshit, and that doesn't fit Sakura at all. It feels really weird. Yeah, but no, those are some pretty good songs. No, there was also ending songs, at least from the spinoff. There was Dance Dance, which was the song for the Battle Familia movie. I at least saw that. At least I heard that song is pretty good. Riot and Bloom. Oh, John or Sakura and Aguilera actually becomes a good guy called Sofina. They have a special with all the other female writers, and they have a song, Riot and Bloom. That's pretty decent. Again, I already said My Dream is pretty good. Without You, which has two versions. One version is for the Kamen Rider Revice Mystery, which is a fun time. Still haven't seen it, but fucking Axel's in it and Double's in it, so I might watch it for that. Then they have a version of Without You for Dear Gagaga, which is Hiromi's spinoff, and I imagine that might be good because I heard Without You, the original version. That one's pretty good. There's also Promise, the song that's used for Kamen Rider Beyond Generations. And that one is honestly really good. Really like Promise. If you haven't heard Promise, I recommend Promise. That's probably my second favorite song from this series. But my first one being My Dream. Okay, My Dream is just kind of a really good ballad. So if you haven't heard My Dream, so in terms of top 3 insert songs / ending songs for Revice, it would be My Dream, Promise, they both share number 1, Mirror Mirage, and then Volcano. That's technically 4, but I can't choose between My Dream and Promise. Those are both totally different songs, but they're both really work. They both are really good songs. Yeah. So yeah, Revice is pretty good. It has its own issues. Standalone episodes are a thing, and I think there are a lot more standalone episodes of Revice than there are Saber. Not as much as 0 and 1, sadly. But hopefully this is the right foot, because I really am looking forward to Gates, because I honestly want to see, because Gates is a Battle Royale Kamen Rider, and I'm kind of curious as to what that'll look like. Apparently, Revice is getting another movie. Like, it's obviously getting a winter movie with Gates, what we're getting, but there's also another movie coming out. There's the V Cinema. They've already announced the V Cinema for they announced one for Demons and sorry, I'm blanking on names. They announced one for Hiromi as Demons and Daiji, that's surprising because Hiromi literally can't transform into demons again. So yeah, they announced V Cinema as soon as the series is over for the I guess new organization Bluebird, which is pretty cool. Although again, it feels weird that Hiromi is demons again. That they can still use a demon's suit at all things considering. I mean, he specifically can still use it. But they've also announced obviously the Kamen Rider Revice / Kamen Rider Gates movie, the next Movie War movie, and I look forward to that. I honestly am, because that's probably going to be, I don't know if it's going to be a return to the old style of those crossover movies where they would have the half sections, or like, honestly, it was like split into 3 because the climax had to be in there too. It was like one half was the OG writer or the previous season's writer, the other half was a new writer, then was a climax in the middle of it all. I don't know if that's going to be returned to that format, but I am curious to see what that's going to look like. So yeah, again, I recommend Revice, at least the first part of Revice and the finale for Revice. Middle part, after the dead men are completely gone, after Soletta is quote unquote killed, big question mark if you want to deal with that storyline and some of the disappointments there, but it has some moments, such as Hiromi's return was actually pretty good in hindsight. And yeah, that is all from me. I suck at outros. I also want to say this: if you've managed to sit through the whole video this far, I want to say thank you for watching. I'm going to try to improve the video quality as much as I can with my limited resources. But I also, if you've watched this whole video, you might be interested in more Kamen Rider stuff. I have some books. Yeah, because I am a writer as well as a semi-amateur video YouTuber. Semi-amateur, I guess now VTuber. That's hilarious to say out loud. But yeah, I have books. 2 of them, at least 2 of my current projects, are very Kamen Rider and Super Sentai inspired, and 2 other ones, which are essentially remakes of old net novels I made way back in the day. They are very anime inspired. I mean, I know not everyone who watches Kamen Rider likes anime, but the line is so close that it catches enough people. So yeah, if you like those and you like to read, which hopefully you like to read, because